I want to thank my partners, Vicki and Jay, for your remarks, but mostly for your partnership. We really are all in this together. And I want to ask all of you I want to remind you to pay attention and put your, notice the QR code on the screen. We want you to be part of this conversation. Later in the program, you'll have a chance to submit questions. So please go to the QR code, submit your questions. And now it is my deep honor and my privilege to introduce President Bill Clinton and Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton. Thank you all. Thank you. Well, we thank you. You know, please be seated. We're still part of the appetizer course. I just can't thank Stephanie enough for everything she does to lead the Clinton Presidential Center and the entire staff, and to Jay and Vicki and everyone who is producing these amazing programs and opportunities. Bill and I are incredibly grateful and very excited to be back here for the 20th anniversary. We are looking forward to some incredible conversations. Part of what we wanted to do is to make sure that we all had a common understanding of the programs of the foundation, everything that Bill started, that he and Chelsea were so deeply involved in making happen, that I am privileged now to be part of. We also have members of the Clinton Foundation board with us, and they've been extraordinary partners. I'm so grateful to all of them. So we are expressing our appreciation for all of you and what you each individually and collectively have done, going way back to 1991, 92, and some of you way back, even before that. But this is not about just celebrating the past. We are committed to a vibrant, exciting, meaningful future. And we want all of you to be part of that. And we have a lot of plans that we are working on that we'll be, announcing and laying out in the weeks ahead. But our overwhelming message today is be of good cheer, find ways to work together. We hope some of those will include working with us with our programs here in Little Rock and across the country and indeed the world, because we want to keep thinking about tomorrow. And so with that, let me ask Bill to say a few words.
Thank you very much. We've got a heavy and good program, so I will bless you with a short talk. There are people in this audience who started with me more than 50 years ago when I ran for Congress, and then when I was Attorney General, and then when I was governor, and then, well, yeah, I do have 2 kindergarten classmates in this audience. And it's amazing they still speak to me yet. But I'm saying this because I've always believed that every stage of your life, if you're fortunate, will lead to another stage with new challenges and new opportunities. And I don't like the extreme negative and endlessly divisive direction that is often richly rewarded, because it's easier the way our brain works to trigger our fears and our hopes. So it requires a good deal of discipline to hear all the clamorous voices and all the debates and sort it through to something that will bring a good result for everybody. My only positive reflection on these long, wonderful years I've had is that the 8 years I served had the most broadly shared prosperity across all income groups of anyone since World War II. And I don't think you can guarantee equality, but you can darn sure guarantee equality of opportunity. You can guarantee the right of people to have a chance to fulfill their God-given gifts and to pursue their own dreams, as long as they don't step all over other people. And so I am here mostly to say thank you for a lifetime that was fun, rewarding, occasionally heartbreaking and frustrating, but it's all part of life. The real question is, what are you going to do tomorrow? Everybody suffers defeat. Everybody has things that are unfair happen to them. The question is, what are you going to do? And we all have to keep going. And this 20-year anniversary and all the good things that happened, the Clinton School, the Presidential Leadership Scholars, the Kumpuris Lectures, all the things that have happened are a tribute to all of you who have worked or contributed and who basically have believed that a free, democratic, small d society is worth working for, fighting for, and getting up off the mat for. Every day, year in, year out. So I think about some days how old and creaky I am, and then a lady went through a photo line recently, just a couple of minutes ago, and said she was 102 years old. And she had no walker, she had no wheelchair, she was getting it on. And I thought, you know, I want to be her when I grow up. We just have to keep going. Nobody knows how long we have. Nobody knows what good or bad we'll have. We just have what's here in front of us. And this foundation and this center is a tribute to human possibility and a bow of respect to people's dreams, and cheering from the sidelines always on people who are trying to make better tomorrows, all because of you. And I am very grateful. I hope you enjoy the rest of the program, and I hope by the time it's over, you can tell the difference between the West Wing and the real West Wing, although I never was sure when it was happening which was better. God bless you. Thank you.
We'll be back. Thank you.
And now, the West Wing meets the real West Wing. Please welcome cast members Melissa Fitzgerald, Dule Hill, and Richard Schiff, and Clinton administration alumni Mark Guerin, Stephen Gooden, and our moderator, Capricia Penovic Marshall.
Wow. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is so wonderful to be back here in the Rock, celebrating this 20th anniversary. I've had such a great time catching up with old friends, sharing stories, perhaps eating a bit too much doughs, and, you know, just a lot of laughter and so many hugs. So I just want to say thank you, a special thank you to Stephanie Streett and the entire Clinton Center team for making all of this happen this wonderful weekend. You know, yesterday I had the opportunity to go to the Clinton Library and take a walk around with some of my former White House colleagues. And as we walked through, we recalled just these moments of inspiration, certainly the demanding work, but rewarding work. But above all else, the purposefulness of it, the real opportunity to have contributed to something that was greater than ourselves. It remains each of our tremendous honor to have served our country under President Clinton and to serve you, Secretary Clinton. Thank you. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of 8 extraordinary years of protecting and advancing our democracy and of putting people first. Thank you. Okay, so it's September 1999. The West Wing premiered 25 years ago. I can't believe that. And it premiered to great acclaim. It remains one of the most thought-provoking shows that undeniably inspired people to pursue a life in politics and public service. Richard, Dulé, Melissa, you provided viewers a behind-the-scenes look at the lives of the president's senior staff, offering a vision of what politics could aspire to be, even amid its realities. It helps spark the idea that leadership and service are about more than power. They're about responsibility, collaboration, and striving toward a greater good. Mark and Stephen, well, the two of you lived those real lives. Every day was in front of the curtain, and every day was consequential. Thank you all so very much for traveling to Little Rock for this special discussion, and thank you, Mike Taylor, for making this panel possible. Charlie, Dulé. Let me begin with you. You played the presidential aide, a position that I'm sure most people had never heard of before. Presidential aides are the closest advisors and confidants of the president. You are really on the front line to support decisions, provide briefings, and oversee the day-to-day operations, always keeping the president's agenda in the forefront. This position is so integral to the functions of the most powerful man, at least today man, in the world. What stood out to you about the demanding duties of the presidential aide and what was expected of him?
I would say it was exactly that. Before I got a chance to get a close look at the character, I really had no idea who this character was. Okay, he's someone who helps the president. But then Dee Dee Myers afforded me the opportunity to meet with Chris Ensko on our first trip to DC, which I'm going to digress a little bit. It was a very wild thing because just a few weeks before I was looking for a job. And then the next thing I know, I'm playing basketball with Richard Schiff and Juwan Howard and Martin Sheen and Rob Lowe right there on Pennsylvania Avenue. Wow. And there's the White House behind us. But I had a chance to meet with Chris Ensko. I believe it was at the Hyatt. And I can still see it. We met for a coffee right out there at the restaurant. And he started to really tell me about his experience. And it was at that point that I realized how integral he was to making the process work of the most powerful person on the planet. And is that also at that point that I realized the stakes that were there. Because on set, if I mess up, I say, I'm sorry, cut. I'm sorry, cut, or, if we're doing this long walk and talk and I by chance fumble Mr. President, we just start over. But with Chris, I realized you can't get it wrong, because if you do get it wrong, that there is a domino effect that happens. There's too much at stake. And that really helped me to, I guess, understand how to approach the character. He also let me know that heads of state knew him by his first name. And that really stuck out to me as well. It's like you see like the Prime Minister of the UK, and he says, hey, he knows Chris, or he knows Stephen, or he knows Andrew, you know what I mean? And that really resonated with me as well. The fact that you're with the president all the time, and you get to see the president with his highs and his lows, and you kind of become a confidant to the president. When you get away from the cameras, you get a chance just to be two beings in sharing time and space. And that really, helped me to formulate how I was going to approach the character with Martin Sheen as the president.
Oh, that's so helpful. Stephen,
Yes, ma'am.
you were the real life presidential aide. We traveled many miles together, my friend. I enviably watched him in his special blend of intellect, discretion, and tireless work ethic as he navigated all of those daily judgment calls, knowing each and every one was so consequential, and you had to get it right 100% of the time, and my friend, you did. Uh, can you please share with us, those experiences from your White House years, that what those meant to you? And you often said that this job was like being Tigger from Winnie the Pooh, that you were the only one. What did you mean by that?
Okay, thank you for those compliments. First of all, you handled yourself with grace extraordinarily well. So I'll get to Tigger in just a second. So I grew up in a small town in Texas. My mother was a nurse. My father was a police officer. I lived in a mobile home going to high school. And the president's aide is the most spectacular experience you can ever have in politics or public service. And so first I want to say that I'm very grateful for that opportunity.
And on television too, and on television.
Conveys on TV too. I'm grateful for that opportunity. I want to also acknowledge that there are literally thousands of people who are like myself, have been inspired by the Clintons to enter public service. And that's going back, the president referenced his congressional race. Maybe you worked in the Attorney General's office, the governor's mansion, Children's Defense Fund, the Senate, the White House, and now at the Clinton Center. They have inspired literally thousands upon thousands of us around public service. And I want to acknowledge that I am honored to represent many of those people up here today. As they say, public service is noble and it is important, and they lead by example on that. Okay, so Tigger, again, it's an awe-inspiring experience. The first time that it blew me away, I substituted for Andrew Friendly, who had the job before me, and it just so happened that President Clinton had to attend Richard Nixon's funeral. And so I'm on Air Force One, I'm traveling to Richard Nixon's funeral, I'm standing in a room with 5 living presidents in one moment after growing up in Gainesville, Texas. And, that's, talk about something that kind of blows you away, that blows you away. But the job itself, the Tigger piece, there are many functions around the president that have to be around the president 24 hours a day or whenever he's out in certain situations, but they all have a backup. The head of the Secret Service has a backup. The White House physician has a backup. There's a substitute person or rotations for every single job except for the president's aide. So you're the only one who lives and experiences every day with him, because the job is basically, you get a briefing book at the beginning of the day. It's a copy of his briefing book, and your job is to survive the day together with him. So that's why it's like Tigger, because you're the only one.
That also why the turnaround, because how long normally do aides last in the position?
Not very long. Andrew was in it for, I think, maybe 14 or 16 months. I made it 3 years. I was sandwiched by bad times. The congressional midterm elections were in 1994. And then, 1998 was a very contentious year, but I was there in the role for 3 years. It was an amazing experience.
You lasted a long time.
I did. I think I've lasted the longest out of all the personal aides.
Yes.
We all lasted way longer than we should have.
Well, this is just going to keep rolling. Richard, in Excelsis Deo was my favorite episode. And of so many others here.
Not everyone clapped.
Yeah, we want to hear more clapping.
Try it again.
More clapping.
No, you can be honest. It's okay. You can be honest.
And I think it's because we experienced government at its best. It's compassion and striving to do right by everyone. In this episode, Toby shows us how, in particular, the job of White House communications director requires more than just overseeing the messaging and public image of the president, that there is a complexity to serving these top jobs that requires a balance between the application of the policy and the realities of the application. Like in this episode, the struggles with the death of a homeless veteran. Tell us what you learned about one of the most important positions in the West Wing.
Well, if the president's personal aide is Tigger, then the director of communications is Eeyore. Thanks for noticing me.
Wah, wah.
He's very much, I think, the quiet, the guy behind the curtains, hopefully directing a message that comes through the administration that is honest and that incites excitement and that policies can happen and manifest and so on. But what that episode taught me, well, first of all, Dee Dee Myers and I had a conversation before that, which was that she was involved in a senior advisor to the president, as I was as well, in a discussion in the Oval Office about a policy, and her idea was accepted by the president, her take, and that the next day, walking to the White House at every kiosk, back when there were kiosks, every newspaper on every kiosk had that policy as a headline. And that's when it hit her that every decision that they make or that she is involved in making has an effect on people's lives and can affect whether people live or die, whether they have health care or not, whether they have homes or not, and so on. And that was like a punch in the gut for me, because I realized that's when, if Toby felt like he had a burden, that's when I felt like I put the earth on his shoulders and walked around like Atlas, although not as buff. And so this episode was a way in which Toby was dragged into the storyline. It wasn't like a voluntarily. It wasn't even the note was found in his jacket, in the homeless man's in the mall who had died, and he got dragged in. And it was the way the lovely actor Lance, and I forget his last name, who played the cop, who was at the scene, and it was the way that the cop was not respecting the soldier who had died that got to Toby, and he deserved respect because he saw the tattoo that he was a Marine on his arm, and he went down this rabbit hole, this journey to find a way to give this man respect. And it led to finding the brother of the homeless man who was slow, who was challenged. And I remember the line that Toby had to the gentleman under the highway, under the overpass, which was trying to explain that he could help get him a respected funeral in Arlington. He goes, "I'm a very powerful man." And the way that it happened that I did that, I was embarrassed by the line, that I had to say that line. It was embarrassing. The power was embarrassing, but it was capable of of making a difference in this moment. And the way that I did that line, I'm doing this because I remember bringing my hand to my forehead and getting so frustrated with the fact that I had to say this out loud. And that he made such an effort to make a difference in one person's life who was no longer alive, but that his brother would be able to see the respect that this man was ultimately given. It was the people that we depicted are very similar to, I think, the people we met in real life, who want to leave the world a better place than how they found it. And it's why I think these characters were loved, and it's why I think you guys were loved in the White House, and why the Clintons are so respected and loved by this amazing community and by a lot of us around the country and the world, to leave the world a better place than how you found it. And that was one very small way in which this character can make a difference in that episode. And so I don't know if I answered your question.
You did so beautifully. Thank you. Thank you. Melissa, I first just want to note, thank you for your wonderful book. What's next? A backstage pass to the West Wing, its cast and crew, and its enduring legacy of service. Everyone here needs to go out and make it part of their holiday shopping, along with Citizen, of course, as well. But thank you for that. It's a wonderful, wonderful read.
Well, thank you. It was really a joy and an honor to work on it with the help of everyone from the cast and others.
Your character, Carol, had the thankless role of watching after the fast-walking and talking press secretary. I never understood where they all were going when they were walking so fast through the hallways.
In circles.
The three of us, Steve and Mark and I'd be like, where are they going? Why are they walking so fast?
We still don't know.
Literally in circles.
Those jobs, the assistants in the White House, they often get little notice, and they have to juggle a wide range of responsibilities, from drafting memos and speeches to coordinating with other staff and agencies, and certainly improvising when necessary. As you developed your character, what did you appreciate about that role, and how did you bring what you learned from the real life people into the role of Carol on the screen? And did you model your role after a particular person in the Clinton administration? Perhaps they're here today.
Well, I will answer your question, I promise. But before I do, I just want to say what an honor it is. I'm just struck by what an honor it is to be here on this stage and in this room among so many incredibly inspiring people who have certainly inspired us, and your dedication to serving in public service, your lives is just, it is truly inspiring, and we're all grateful. So I just want to acknowledge all of you. So thank you for all that you've done for our country. And I had the good fortune to grow up around a lot of people that did dedicate their lives to public service. My parents and my father particularly, and a lot of their friends. So I grew up thinking that it was the most noble way to spend your time, your talents, and your gifts, was to give to your community, to your country. And so I was so excited to be even a small part of the West Wing, and to be part of that, what I felt would be not only a piece of television history, but something that would have social significance and really highlight the incredible people who work in public service. So I think for me, it was really about serving CJ and being loyal to CJ and making sure that she had everything she needed, that I had her back at every step of the way. And, something that's different about my character to me is I'm not an organized person. I felt she had to be. And to make sure that every little detail was handled so that CJ could shine. And, Allison and I actually joke about this a lot. I'm like, if I do my job well as an actor, people probably won't notice me that much. It's only if I mess up that I'll be noticed. And I feel like that's true for the character as well. So it was really important that she do everything perfectly so that CJ could do the important work she needed to do.
Oh, well, yeah, I was an assistant, but I was an assistant to the First Lady, but it was the same. She just wanted to work very hard to make sure that they had absolutely everything that they needed. Mark, you held several very important positions in the White House, from communications director to deputy chief of staff. You were required to have an extraordinary blend of strategic vision, and you did have, political savvy, tons of that, and certainly resilience. 24/7, you had to be constantly prepared to react to breaking news, crises, or shifting political landscapes. Give us the real life insights of these demanding roles.
Well, to state the obvious, in this stage, we didn't have a script. So a little challenging in that sense, but
That's the answer to all the world's problems. Just have Aaron Sorkin write it.
we needed him. We needed
Script it.
could have used that on any given day. I would say, it's just an enormous privilege. Krisha, you said it beautifully in starting out, Stephen, to work in a museum. And it's, as a political junkie, you're never lost by driving through that gate in West Exec and thinking, I'm working in an amazing place with amazing people. And for me, with Mac McClarty, as a chief of staff, and people like Stephen and Capricia and others, Stephanie, you were really all in the game together. So it was enormously hardworking. I don't think we ever lost sight of the mission, so clearly stated by the president and the vice president, Secretary Clinton, the privilege of public service. I guess what comes back to me thinking about this and going through the library yesterday is I'm also struck by the power of an idea, particularly as you focused us on service at the start. And at the beginning of the White House years, President Clinton, like another young president, had a power of an idea to create a domestic version of the Peace Corps, Americor. A brilliant idea at the time, controversial at the beginning, brilliantly led by Eli Siegel and others. And his power of an idea, the president's, so well executed. And here we are years later, decades later, and 1.4 million Americans have served as Americor members. So it's, and that power of an idea, I think, that he so boldly and brilliantly showed to us, I think, has led to an ethos of service in our country. And that's one of the many privileges of thinking back on that time and serving an administration, a president, vice president, and certainly the first lady, who I so enormously respect.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we all maintain those sentiments in our hearts. Please forgive me. I keep getting buzzed on my telephone, a text here that one of our audience members urgently needs to make a comment. And so Joy, are you here, Joy? Can you please bring a microphone to the greatest governor that ever served in the entire country, the one, the only, Terry McAuliffe.
Right there.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. As a fellow Southerner, governor of Virginia, I was born in New York, but don't tell anybody that. Nobody knew that in Virginia. But think about this when you go to bed tonight. You're looking at history here. Our first governor, Patrick Henry, 1775, started the American Revolution. Give me liberty, give me death. Our second governor, Thomas Jefferson. And then Terry McAuliffe. Is this not a great country? Let me just, first of all, this is really a special moment for a lot of us. I remember it was 25 years ago this month when I got a phone call from Nancy Hernreich, who's here somewhere, and said, would I come down and have lunch with the Clintons? Now, you know, I had a lot of roles: finance chairman, co-chair, chaired the inaugural, chaired the convention, you know, chaired the millennial, a lot of events I raised a lot of money for and so forth. But whenever the Clintons called and said, would you have lunch, a meal, that was going to be expensive. I know I speak for Mac, who's over here. Literally, we love him, but the most expensive friends we've ever had. Is that fair enough, Mac? But listen, it was a great 8 years that changed the country. I want to thank, first of all the Arkansas travelers who were here with us today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It was a magnificent ride that we had those 8 years ago. And at that lunch, we started the first discussion on building this beautiful library that you have down the street. And it really is something I want to thank everybody here in Arkansas to make us so at home. But I view this library and the extension we're going to build, this is not only about the past, it's more importantly to me about the future. We just went through a very tough election. And people are all saying, we got to get back to the Clinton model. And I view this facility, yep, give that a round of applause, you know. And James Carville and I, we were over at Doe's the other night, and who had a complaint about peace or prosperity, right? I mean, budget surpluses and brought everybody together, the CHIPS bill, peace in Northern Ireland. We could go on forever about what the Clintons accomplished. But I view this facility as to get new leaders who are going to lead our countries for so many years going forward. But I have a question, because I thought the show was okay. I didn't really think it was great, because we had 7 years of shows 7 years. And do you think one person in one show, you all had these great lofty policy positions, none of you would have had a job if it weren't for the money men. And not once were you donors ever mentioned, ever, or the finance chair. So I guess my question going to be, let's make this pretty simple. I want a sequel of this show.
Woo!
And I'm thinking in my mind, Richard, I love you, but you got no hair. I think Dulé, maybe you could be playing me. And if he's not available, Brad Pitt or someone who, has a similar body structure to mine would actually be it. So on behalf of all of us who've done fundraisers and hosting events, I want to make sure that we are in the sequel and we have a top role. That's all I'm asking. Thank you. God love Arkansas.
Oh my goodness. The one, the only Terry McAuliffe. Thank you for that. So, Dulé, do you think there might be a reboot? What do you think, Richard, Melissa?
I'm all for it. I don't know if people realize this, but the greatest governor and I are going to be doing a film together. So I think that we should just be, that's a joke, everybody. That's a joke. But I think, we should have a reboot. It should be The West Wing, where the money resides. Starring Governor McAuliffe.
I love it. I love it. What do you think, Melissa?
Oh, I'm in. I think it would be great.
Richard?
On brand. On brand.
I've always wanted to do a Jack Benny take. I think I just did one.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Personally, I don't think a reboot will match what we did.
No.
It has to be very, very different, and I think we wouldn't be in it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have a show that I'm developing, which is going to bring hopefully a show about politics on the local level and on the state level, and now especially I think that the states is a bastion of defense against what might be coming at us. And when we get involved, thank you very much. When we get involved, not my idea, but when we get involved, on the state level, that's where democracy really begins. That's where it starts, at the city council level, at the local level, the mayor level, and then the state legislators. When we start taking the state legislators back, that's when we can start taking our democracy back.
There you go.
And
there you go.
I do want to say really quickly, what I appreciate about the West Wing is that when people can see something, then it allows them to believe that they can actually attain that and do it. And I feel like the West Wing has done that for a generation of people. A show like Richard's, though, would be a magnificent thing because people then could be inspired to get involved. And if people can get inspired to get involved, then we can move our country forward.
Oh, and speaking of inspiration, service has always been the bedrock of the President and Secretary Clinton's work. They believe in service to country and especially to people. When President Clinton opened the Clinton Center 20 years ago, his desire was and remains to honor those who served and reflect on the importance of service. Like the president, the West Wing inspired so many young people to go into service, whether in politics or community activism. Can the three of you very briefly just tell us how the show inspired you to go into some sort of service thereafter?
Well, I'll say for me, there were two people. Martin Sheen, because he truly lives and breathes being of service. And being at a young age, I mean, it's amazing to me that the show came out 25 years ago and I'm still 23. So that's very strange to me. But being at a young age and seeing that in action day in and day out planted those seeds in my life. So, and then the second person would be another M on the show, and that would be Melissa. Melissa really is the heart and soul of our service. She's the heart and soul of us being engaged. She is the one who actually went from the screen to DC to actually be involved. And she really is the beacon of light that inspires us to get involved.
Well, I think Dulé gives me more credit than I deserve, but I have been very fortunate in my life to have been part of the West Wing, and that certainly helped us have access to different issues and causes. And when Mary McCormick, who co-wrote What's Next with me, and I set out to write the book, it was critical. We weren't going to do it unless we could do it through the lens of service, because that has been the through line of our friendships, of our relationships. And I think it has deepened our relationships and our friendships, and has been sort of the core of all of us, starting with Martin. And, I'm very fortunate now. Martin introduced me, and my father introduced me to the work that I get to do now with an organization in DC called All Rise. And we provide treatment and recovery support instead of incarceration for individuals with substance use, mental health disorders who are involved in the justice system. And the West Wing has, of course, getting introduced to the work through Martin and my dad, who started a mental health court in Philadelphia many years ago. But the cast of the West Wing, the fans of the show, have been so supportive. And without that, that has really helped move the needle forward, not only on the issue, but has made the journey of it so much more meaningful and enjoyable for me. And that you all inspire and motivate me. And I'm so just deeply grateful for these friendships.
Oh, sweet.
And you guys, you don't have to do that. You're leading by example. Everybody can be great because everybody can serve, is what Martin Luther King said. Whatever your walk in life, whether you're an actor, a movie star, whatever, you can find ways to add and give back to your community. So you guys are great for doing that.
Yeah.
And what I love real quickly about the West Wing family is when one of us calls, we all answer. So we all inspire each other. If Richard calls, if Brad calls, if Martin calls, if Mary or Melissa, we're in. And that's a beautiful thing, because we're all inspiring each other to keep, and challenging each other to keep staying involved.
And it's also fun. We get together and we do things together. That is, and that's so enjoyable. I'm so happy to be here, if only just to see the two of you.
Okay, go, Richard.
And again, like what I was saying, everybody.
Sorry, Richard.
I have a whole thing. No, I'm just playing.
Nothing has changed after all these years. I have a little different take on it, because I'm kind of a recluse, and I'm kind of shy, and I don't like going out into the public unless it's like to a stadium where no one notices. So going out and commit and doing service is never easy for me. It's always like the first time that I noticed that I can make a difference, and therefore I should, was sitting in Lafayette Park while we were shooting The West Wing, and I had a day off. And I got a call on my phone, because I guess we had phones in those days. Yeah, I had on my phone, and it's I said, hello, hi, this is John Podesta. I go, oh, hi. Where are you right now? Well, actually, I'm across the street in Lafayette Park. He goes, would you mind coming over to the treaty room in the OAOB? We're having a session with the National Breast Cancer Coalition, and Bill and Hillary were going to host, but they're busy now. So would you mind coming over and hosting us? And I thought my first 11 impulses was no. And then I thought, well, I have to. So I went over there, and of course, I've experienced knowing people who have been afflicted and so on. So I had a thing or two to say. But the women that were there, who are all heroes, who are all extraordinary people who had come together, coalesced, and working to, deal with what they've been afflicted with, and what so many women in America are afflicted with. But it was there. I walked in, and it was like Elvis went back to Memphis, because we were West Wing, and that's where we are when we go to the convention, wherever we go, and because people who are political know and love us for reasons that you can explain, and I had such an impact in that room, and they were so grateful and uplifted by whatever the hell I said. I don't think it mattered what I said. Then I realized something that President Clinton said earlier this morning, which was 90% of life is showing up. So I'm lucky that I have people like Melissa to drag me out into the world, but also people like Sheila Bronfman, who got me to Florida, the Panhandle, and I met a few hundred of the Arkansas travelers, and by the way, I've just campaigned again this round in 9 different states in 2016, and campaigned with President Biden back in 2007, and so on. It's never been as efficient and as motivated and as powerful as what I experienced with the Arkansas Travelers.
Oh, yay!
And it was, it was longer hours than the West Wing. It was up at 6 and done at 12, and calling on anyway. One more thing, mentioned Martin Luther King. My stepfather, who was just awarded, I was with him at the White House with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, was the lawyer and speechwriter and foot soldier for Martin Luther King. His name is Clarence B. Jones, and he's still kicking, and he's still with us. And but we used to have long discussions about civil rights and about due process and Miranda and so on. And so every time I think about whether I should be called into the service or not, I think of him because of his lifelong dedication to the work. And even now at 93 years old, he's out telling people to vote because his contemporaries died getting people the right to vote. And so I do a lot of work for the ACLU and so on, and for public counsel. But you guys are the real foot soldiers. You guys are the ones that do the real work, and so I'm very honored to be here with you and grateful for the work that you do.
Well, thank you for that, Richard. And thank you for your service. Okay, I'm being asked now with a blazing red sign that says, please conclude. But I know you're all loving this, so I'm just going to just wrap it with this.
It's very subtle, very subtle.
Very subtle, right? I'm going to wrap it with our wonderful Mark, who served, as I said, in not only those 2 wonderful capacities, but also as the director of the Peace Corps. He also serves on the board of the Clinton School, and you work with some amazing students. Can you just offer a message to them about the importance of public service?
Well, I would say this, because I have the privilege of working with Vicki on her advisory board. It's an amazing school here, and I've got to know some of the students, some of the alums, including one who's a graduate from my current institution, Hobart and William Smith. I guess if I were to say, it's like the old Nike ad, just do it. I think the lesson that I take from this weekend, certainly from the President and Secretary Clinton, the lives they've led, the lives of consequence they've led, their books testify to it, the inspiration of the West Wing speaks to it. And I think for so many of the students, current and recent alums, the question will become in a few decades of a life hopefully well led, what matters most? Will it be the number of cars in your driveway or baubles or ornaments? I doubt it. It will be if you can say to yourself with truth and honesty and conviction that you made a difference. And that was the experience I had with great colleagues like Capricia and Stephen and others. That's the real inspiration I take from a weekend like this and from the important work of the center. So I would encourage them to get in the arena. We need you. This century will need you. And you can make an enormous impact.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for those words. Thank you all so very much. What a special session, right? Thank you, Richard, Mark, Dulé, Stephen, and Melissa. This was really special. Thank you. I think we go that way.
Please welcome Greg Mill, Chief Executive Officer of the Clinton Global Initiative.
Wow, that's a tough act to follow. Really glad I was next. Good afternoon. It's great to be here in Little Rock celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Clinton Presidential Center. At the Clinton Global Initiative, or CGI as we are known, We work to bring together established and emerging global leaders to identify and implement solutions for the world's most pressing challenges. The hallmark of CGI is our commitments to action model, new, specific, and measurable programs and projects that now have reached more than 500 million people around the world. At this year's CGI annual meeting alone, we announced 175 new commitments to action that address climate resiliency, health equity, the protection of journalists, humanitarian response, and other global challenges. And when they are fully executed, these commitments will provide a combined $400 million in funding to historically underserved communities, reduce over 7.3 million metric tons of CO2 annually, and expand health services for more than 11 million people. At CGI, we are a community of doers. We are leaders taking action to make a tangible difference in people's lives around the world. And today, we are honored to introduce some of these leaders, CGI and foundation partners who are putting people first and working to make a more equitable world for everyone. They include longtime partner Darren Williams of Southern Bancorp, who is working to expand, who is working to expand economic opportunity in Arkansas and beyond through innovative models started in the Clinton administration and continuing through with his work today. Liz Dozier, founder of Chicago Beyond, who started her work in education and is now transforming approaches to philanthropy and improving maternal health. You will also hear from Ammar Connolly, whose commitment to service and volunteerism started in the Clinton administration and continues today through partnerships with both CGI and the Clinton Presidential Center. And from our good friend, Mayor David Holt of Oklahoma City, who will speak about the importance of coming together during the worst of tragedies. And finally, from journalist Laura Ling, who will share her story and the importance of leadership and empathy. The Clinton Presidential Center is a beacon of hope and community in Arkansas, which brings together diverse people and groups to drive action. And it is only with a strong and sustained presence in the community that true engagement happens and progress is made. So I want to thank the center for providing us that important foundation for the past 20 years, for being a constant partner and remaining committed to our shared future success. Thank you so much.
Please welcome Darren Williams, Chief Executive Officer of Southern Bancorp Incorporated.
The Chief Executive Officer of Southern Bancorp, one of the largest and oldest community development finance institutions in America. Now, we were founded almost 40 years ago through the visionary leadership of President Bill Clinton and the capital fundraising prowess of Secretary Hillary Clinton. President Clinton was trying to find ways to stimulate economic activity in the rural and underserved communities across Arkansas. Interestingly, larger banks were abandoning rural communities for more profitable urban centers, leaving little to no access to capital in places that needed it most. Now, thanks to Jan Piercy, one of Secretary Clinton's classmates, she introduced the Shore Bank to President Clinton. Shore Bank was taking a new approach to supporting economically distressed communities by intentionally lending in communities that had been redlined, communities that did not have access to capital and credit. Recognizing the importance of vibrant rural communities, President Clinton believed that this model could work right here in Arkansas. So he invited the leadership from Southern Bancorp, from Shore Bank here to see if that idea would work. Of course, they needed to raise capital for this financial experiment. And this is when Secretary Clinton sprung into action. She raised initial capital from groups like the Walton Family Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation. They cobbled together about $10 million to start this organization, to get this project, this financial experiment off the ground. Today, I'm proud to say that it worked. Today, Southern Bancorp is a family of 3 financial institutions with $2.8 billion in assets. Thank you. We have 56 locations across Arkansas and Mississippi, and 10 markets. We're the only bank in town. An additional 3, we're one of only 2. We have over 80,000 customers across Arkansas and Mississippi, and our mortgage division, which prioritizes lending to minority home buyers and first-time home buyers, works throughout Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, as well as Mississippi and Arkansas. And through our in-house fintech company, we have customers in every state in the country. We have financed approximately 10 billion loans since our inception. Our brand of banking is consistent with President Clinton's long-standing belief that increasing economic opportunity for people in places that have historically been underserved and denied such access is critically important, both as a matter of fairness, but also because it's good for America's overall economy. As a presidential candidate, President Clinton shared this vision, this dream of having 100 financial institutions like Southern operating all across America. And once elected, he made this dream a reality. In 1994, he signed the Regal Community Development and Regulatory Act, which created the Community Development Financial Institution Fund within the Department of Treasury, which certifies and supports institutions like Southern Bancorp. Through the CDFI fund and his administration promoting this, the CDFIs have grown to a significant heights. The fund provides catalytic capital that has allowed CDFIs to thrive. And by the end of his presidency, there were over 430 CDFIs in the country, financing more than 40,000 affordable housing units, financing 7,500 businesses that created over 52,000 jobs, and providing access to capital across America, providing $5.7 billion in total financing during that time. Now, the Clintons didn't stop there. 25 years later, they continued to support the CDFI space through their foundation. And in 2019, they hosted the Economic Inclusion Growth, the Way Forward. It was a domestic policy conference right here in Arkansas at the Clinton Center. And I had the privilege of jointly interviewing both of them at this conference, where we not only examined the evolution and success of CDFIs, we also aim to accelerate and scale the Clinton Global Initiative's existing work and commitment to focus on developing commitments of action to support the CDFI space. And 5 years since that conference, I'm proud to say that the number of CDFIs has grown by more than 40%. Today, there are 1,400 CDFIs in America, with some $400 billion in assets used to uplift low and moderate income rural, urban, and Native communities all across the country. And through the CDFI fund and through the visionary leadership of President Clinton, we continue to grow and have significant impact. Since the fund was established, it has provided more than $8 billion in awards to CDFIs and mission-driven lenders. It's also provided more than $8 billion in tax credits to community development entities. For every $1 in federal support from the federal government, CDFIs have attracted $8 in private capital. An 8-to-1 match is good by any standard. Yes. Now, the impact of CDFIs really is much more than capital. It's about the people that we serve. It's about the communities that we help build. I'm reminded of Hoffinger Industries, a manufacturing facility in Helena, Arkansas, in Phillips County. 20 plus years ago, it was set to close. It was going to be sold to a foreign company, and those manufacturing jobs were going to be taken and shipped overseas. The management of that company said, we can't let that happen. They approached Southern and said, can you help us finance a management-led buyout? With Arkansas Capital Corporation, another CDFI here in Arkansas, we financed that buyout. And I'm proud to say that today, Hoffinger Industries is the largest private employer in Phillips County. Then there's Jennifer Williams. No relation, but Jennifer is a school teacher in Cleveland, Mississippi. At the height of her experience, she had 9 different payday loans. And when she was paid, she drove around to each store paying on those loans because she could not pay them off. Well, she had a radio advertisement from Southern advertising our financial education programs. At her wit's end, she said, why not? She enrolled. Shortly after completing the course, we gave her a small loan. She took that loan and worked with one of our financial health counselors. And today, I'm proud to say she no longer uses payday lenders. And recently, she was able to finance a car in a local dealership. And then there's Dr. Tanya Lyons, an African-American dentist in Memphis. She was turned down by 32 financial institutions before she came to Southern. We were able to finance her dream, and now people in in Western Memphis and North Mississippi have access to health care. And this young lady, she actually every week gives away thousands of pounds of groceries to those who are homeless. But for the opportunity to access capital, none of these stories will be possible. The creation of the CDFI fund was not just good policy or good politics, it made good economic sense. The fund has enjoyed broad-based bipartisan support. Although talent and ability are fairly distributed across America, access to capital and financing is not. CDFI's subsequent administrations, both in Congress and presidential administrations, have recognized the importance of the CDFI space and continue to provide capital to support those communities. So the CDFIs continues to grow, all started by President Bill Clinton. And I think the impact of CDFIs and the Clinton support for them speak to the president and his administration's broader economic policies. Policies that allowed us to balance the budget, to create 22 million jobs during his administration, and a decreased unemployment rate that was the lowest in 3 decades. The Clinton administration's policies worked because they worked for everyone. And those of us who work in the CDFI space, we believe, like President Clinton often says, we've got to build an economy from the bottom up and the middle out. An economy that truly works for everyone, one that doesn't leave anyone behind, but puts people first. From the smallest rural town to the largest city coast to coast. An economy that benefits everyone. And I think it is our shared vision and our shared mission to do just that. Thank you very much.
Please welcome Liz Dozier, founder and chief executive officer of Chicago Beyond.
Hello, everyone. I am Liz Dozier Senghor, the founder and the CEO of Chicago Beyond, a national foundation. My story actually began, though, as an educator. When I became the principal of Finger High School on Chicago's far south side, it was one of the lowest performing schools in the state of Illinois, with over 1,500 students and also over 300 arrests every single year happening inside of our school building. As you know, children thrive in an environment that is shaped by holistic supports. It's shaped by stable relationships and opportunities to explore and ultimately to grow. However, our environment was experiencing trauma at heightened levels that you can't even imagine. By all the things that you might suspect, along with violence and loss of life that was happening all too often. It was this cycle, and it kept happening over and over and over again. And I knew that we needed to change our approach to things. We need to do things differently. But it was not our students that needed changing. It was us. It was the adults that needed to see and do differently by our children. We needed to take different action. And amid a lot of chaos, we flipped the question we would often ask our students, which was, what is wrong with you? Why are you doing that? To, what's happened to you? And we began to teach and practice restorative justice and do peace circles across the building. So we were not only deeply listening to our students, but understanding them in deeper ways, and therefore taking different actions that actually matched their needs. We created new mental health and wellness models and strategies. We started grief counseling, anger management courses during the course of the school day. Simply, we met our children where they were. I believed at that time that if we did that, we could change not only the classroom, but ultimately the entire school. And we did. During my time as principal, the student graduation rates rose from 40% to over 80%. Dropout rates decreased from 20% to down below 2%. Thank you. Students were graduating, 40% of our seniors were graduating with college credits, and our arrest rate was nearly down to 0. Progress was made, but I knew that so much more was possible. I had hope. And I knew I could have a greater impact, not only in education, but ultimately in other areas where there was vast inequities that existed, not only in Chicago, but in cities like ours across the country. So when I decided to begin another chapter of my life outside of the principalship, I founded Chicago Beyond, which was created with the generous support of Mark and Kimbra Walter. We're a foundation with a mission of addressing systemic inequity by backing leaders who are actually closest, most proximate to the issues. Since 2016, we have invested more than $65 million in over 200 organizations and individuals. Our approach is based in many of the learnings that I gleaned from Finger High School, that solutions actually exist within our communities. And it's up to us, whether we're in philanthropy or any other decision makers, to choose to see community leaders and substantially invest in them to disrupt the status quo. At Chicago Beyond, we work on a variety of topics, but one that's always stood out to me, even before attending an all-girls high school, not too long ago, maybe 20 years or so ago, but is that systemic inequity does exist for women and for girls. It's well known that in the US, we have a higher maternity mortality rate than any other high-income country. In Chicago, the maternal mortality rate for Black women is over 2.5 times higher than the average. This is the kind of problem we can actually do something about right now, because research actually shows that 80% of pregnancy-related deaths in the US are 100% completely preventable. So what do we do? Well, one existing solution is birth centers. And for those of you who don't know, a birth center is an alternative to a hospital setting, a place to give birth. The centers provide this more personalized care, holistic care, and ultimately improve maternal mortality outcomes. So knowing that, Chicago Beyond began by investing in Janine Valerie Logan, who's a Chicagoan, a mom, a certified nurse, and a midwife, someone who literally helped change the law in Illinois around birth centers. So with Chicago Beyond's $2 million investment and strategic support, Janine is, right now, creating the only freestanding birth center in Chicago and on the south side of Chicago. So what else can we do? As we began to learn more, Chicago Beyond began to learn more about the space of maternal health and talk to others in the work, we had an idea. And that idea was to audaciously fund leaders in the birth space. And I knew that we needed a strong partner to do that. And we found that partner in the Clinton Global Initiative. And we chose CGI because of their proven success in turning ideas into action, and also because of the Clintons' legacy and ongoing support of advancing the rights of women and girls across the entire planet. Secretary Clinton, as you well know, is the ultimate champion of women and girls. In fact, next year marks the 30th anniversary of the Beijing speech, where she famously said, you know it, women's rights are human rights. Absolutely. And not only did she say it, she acted on it and is still acting on it today. Absolutely. CGI is also a strong partner because of Chelsea's longtime advocacy for health equity, especially in maternal and child health. Chelsea's at the forefront of the health sector. I see this in her own personal work and projects through Clinton Global and the foundation. I see the hope Chelsea and Secretary Clinton have for girls and women, their rights and their future. And thanks to our partnership with CGI, we've been able to turn that hope and our idea into action. Through our commitment with CGI, on stage, along with Secretary Clinton, we announced Chicago Beyond's Fellowship for Black Maternal Health. The fellowship, like the MacArthur Genius Grant, is significant in size. It gives each person $500,000 and no strings attached funding to do their work. This type of unrestricted grant is crucial. It will give leaders on the ground with viable solutions in birth and birth equity the opportunity to have this bold backing to bring their visions around maternal health to life. It allows them to operate in their true zone of genius. This is the first of its kind fellowship for Black maternal health, and it's also a very real signal, a signal that says, we see you, we see the work that you're doing for women and families, and we're investing in you. We received nominations from across the nation, from elders, advocates, birth workers, safety net hospitals, policy experts, scholars, and people who just have given birth. Nominees were chosen both for their specificity and their diversity of perspectives and vantage points. And they lifted up names of some of those who are very well known in the field, and names who honestly don't appear on any funder's list. They pointed us to towns that were big, some towns that were small, in Florida and Texas and Oklahoma, Tennessee, and more. We cannot wait to announce our inaugural fellows next year. Chicago Beyond's work and meeting so many leaders, so many incredible leaders across this country makes us even more hopeful. Collectively, we already have the people, the tools, the strategies to keep really shaking this system and creating positive change for maternal health. And we can't stop now. As Secretary Clinton once said, we need to be as fearless as the women whose stories you have applauded, as committed as the dissidents and the activists you have heard from, as audacious as those who start movements for the peace when all seems lost. The movement to improve Black maternal health is gaining momentum. It's not losing it. And we all have the responsibility to keep up the fight for every woman. We have the responsibility to draw strength from those who think differently, who lead with courage, and dare to just dream and do differently. We must amplify their work, and we must amplify their voices. Organizations like CGI, the Clinton Foundation, represent what's working. Putting people first, driving change, sparking impact, inspiring a shared vision, one that is equitable, just, and ultimately full of hope. Thank you. Thank you.
Please welcome Anne-Maura Conley, President of Voices for National Service, Chief Strategy Officer and Executive Vice President of City Year, and a Presidential Leadership Scholars alumna.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It is so great to be with you all here today. I am Anne-Maura Conley. I serve as the President of Voices for National Service, EVP at City Year, proud Clinton administration alumna, and Presidential Leadership Scholar. It is so great to be back here in Little Rock because for so many here, this is really where it all began. And it's remarkable to see that the ripple effects of the policies and the impact that began in the Clinton administration have continued through the work of the Clinton Foundation and the Presidential Center for the last 20 years. We built a legacy to last. A central part of that legacy is the idea that service in all of its forms binds us together to meet the needs of our communities and our country. For so many in the administration, public service was all about putting people first. It was an honor to serve the American people. And I know we all share President Clinton's belief that the job of government is to make life better for every American. It is one of the reasons Americor became a hallmark program for President Clinton and his administration. Americor was created to inspire a new generation of diverse Americans to roll up their sleeves and work together to tackle the challenges facing their communities. It was also created to help them develop as leaders and as active citizens. Now, the federal investment in Americor has been one of the biggest investments in civilian national service in the history of our country. And the return on that investment has been extraordinary, generating $17 in benefits for every federal dollar spent. But Americor is about so much more than that. It brings to life our shared belief that change is possible and that all people should have the chance to realize their full potential. Americor has helped to develop leaders like Domingo Morales from the Bronx, who was searching for purpose as a young man. And through a year as a Green City Force Americor member, he developed a passion for composting. Today, he's an expert in food chemistry, in safe and healthy composting habits, and he teaches others how to compost the right way through Compost Power, the organization that he launched and leads. Colonel Rebecca Lang from rural Colorado joined Americor after she heard President Clinton talk about it the day the program was launched, and was so inspired by her service through Americor that she went on to serve in the United States Air Force. Today, Colonel Lang is the commander of the Air Force ROTC program and chair of the Department of Aerospace Studies at the University of Colorado Boulder. There are so many more like them. As Mark said, since its creation over 30 years ago, nearly 1.4 million Americans have served in Americor, earning $4.8 billion in Siegel Education Awards to help them pay for college or pay back student loans. Americor has a way of bringing people together, often people from very different places and circumstances. Because the bottom line is, when you are working shoulder to muck and gut a house after a storm, to support students as a city year student success coach, or to provide services to veterans and military families in their transition to civilian life, your focus is really on getting the job done, not on arguing about the things that you don't agree on. Now, the genius of the creation of Americor was that it was built to last because it has sustained bipartisan support. It was designed so everybody has skin in the game: the federal government, NGOs, mayors, governors, the private sector, those who serve, and community members. And Americor delivers a powerful triple bottom line. It develops diverse leaders with strong civic and workforce skills. It generates results that improve the lives of millions of Americans in every corner of this country, and it strengthens our democracy. In fact, Americor has inspired national service programs around the world, including a new Clinton Global Initiative commitment this year to create a UK Year of Service. And Americor continues to innovate, to evolve, and to have impact. Just like President Clinton, Secretary Clinton, and Chelsea continue to create innovative programs like Americor by bringing hearts, heads, and hands together to build a brighter future for people here in Little Rock, through the center, and around the world through the foundation. And while that future can seem uncertain at times, now more than ever, I am reminded of the power of service to bring out the best in all of us. Because as President Clinton always says, our shared humanity matters much more than anything that divides us. And that commitment to each other will show us the way forward together. Thank you.
Please welcome David Holt, the mayor of Oklahoma City.
On April 19th, 1995, there was a clear blue sky in Oklahoma City. It began as a day like any other. There was no indication it would become a defining day for our city and for an American presidency. By 9 a.m. that morning, 361 people had arrived at the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in downtown Oklahoma City. The building housed 17 federal agencies as well as a daycare. Shortly before 9 a.m., an American far-right extremist parked a truck in front of the building. In the truck were about a dozen plastic barrels filled with an explosive combination of ammonium nitrate, nitromethane, and diesel fuel. At 9:02 a.m., the truck exploded, instantly destroying half of the building and murdering 167 people, including 19 children. Shortly after the explosion, a responding nurse was killed by falling debris, bringing the total dead to 168. That morning and its aftermath will always be a part of Oklahoma City's story. It is also a part of President Clinton's. The terrorist who parked that bomb in downtown Oklahoma City intended for his actions to spark a new civil war. You see, the barrels of chemicals in that truck were not the only cause of the explosion. Riding alongside them were invisible barrels that have always been present at such moments in human history. These barrels were filled with intolerance, ignorance, bigotry, conspiracy theories, misinformation, and dehumanization. Inside those barrels was an explosive combination of extreme political views and an arrogant and stubborn unwillingness to accept pluralism, democracy, and compromise. By 9:03 a.m., the barrels of chemicals had expended their fury, but the invisible barrels were still present. In reality, they are always there, and they must always be reckoned with. It is up to us whether they accompany humanity's darkest moments, or whether they are buried where they belong. In the aftermath of April 19th, we would need leaders ready to grab a shovel and do the work. On the evening of April 19th, President Clinton addressed the nation. At this time, we knew nothing of the perpetrators or their specific motivations. Nevertheless, we knew their tactics were cowardly and evil. President Clinton spoke for a nation and called it such. A few days later, President and Mrs. Clinton came to Oklahoma City. In his remarks at a memorial service, he humanized those who had been murdered. They were not foot soldiers in a war, as the terrorists imagined. They were public servants. They were family members, neighbors, and friends. At the memorial service, President Clinton read a letter from someone who had lost a loved one to terrorism. It read, "The anger you feel is valid, but you must not allow yourselves to be consumed by it. The hurt you feel must not be allowed to turn into hate, but instead into the search for justice." He also said, "To all my fellow Americans beyond this hall, I say one thing we owe those who have sacrificed is the duty to purge ourselves of the dark forces which gave rise to this evil. They are forces that threaten our common peace, our freedom, our way of life. When there is talk of hatred, let us stand up and talk against it. When there is talk of violence, let us stand up and talk against it." President Clinton's words set a tone that was carried across our city and our nation. President Clinton helped us meet division with unity. The terrorists who perpetrated this attack did not see their plans for a civil war realized. In fact, as President Clinton would later write in his autobiography, Oklahoma City prompted millions of Americans to reassess their own words and attitudes towards government and toward people whose views differed from their own. Extremism didn't go away, but it was on the defensive. The response to the bombing from President Clinton's Justice Department was important. So too was the legislative response to prevent further acts of terrorism, domestic and international. But nothing was ultimately more important than the leadership role only a president can play. The invisible barrels, the ones filled with hate, extremism, and dehumanization, they can't be found through a warrant. They can only be buried when someone speaks to the better angels of our nature. President Clinton played that role for our nation in the days, weeks, and years that followed April 19th, 1995. And in fact, this coming April, it will have been 30 years. And President Clinton still stands with us in our city in this work. It was a commitment he made to us, and it is a commitment he has kept. At the 1995 memorial service in Oklahoma City, President Clinton also said this: "You have lost too much, but you have not lost everything. And you have certainly not lost America, for we will stand with you for as many tomorrows as it takes." For those who lost so much, the tomorrows can still be hard, even 30 years later. And so President Clinton, representing a nation, has been there. He joined us in Oklahoma City a year later in 1996, and then again in 2000 to dedicate our memorial on the 5th anniversary, and then again at the 10th, the 15th, and the 20th. Only a pandemic kept him from the 25th. The keeping of this commitment has meant a great deal to our city, and especially to those directly affected. This special connection between Oklahoma City and President Clinton has also given us a joint platform to continue sharing the lessons of April 19th. Here in 2024, it may seem that extremism is on the offensive again. But for 30 years in Oklahoma City, we have found purpose in our pain. And we have taken on the obligation to show the scar in our downtown and use it as a reminder to all that hate and dehumanization and political violence are never the answer. President Clinton has clearly felt the same obligation and has stood alongside us for that journey. We will both share that message wherever and whenever it is needed. And for 20 years, this Clinton Presidential Center has helped Americans have better conversations about the issues that might divide us, reflecting the leadership President Clinton delivered in 1995. On behalf of the people of Oklahoma City, we thank President Clinton for that leadership, your friendship, and your support. And we congratulate you on 20 years of the Clinton Presidential Center. Thank you.
Please welcome journalist Laura Ling.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. President Clinton and Secretary Clinton are just about to come onto stage. I hope you're as excited as I am. In March 2009, I was in northern China along the border between China and North Korea, reporting on a story about the trafficking of North Korean women. That is when 2 North Korean soldiers chased me and my colleague, Yuna Lee, down. One soldier kicked me in the head, the jaw, the shoulder, over and over, until he finally managed to pull me onto the frozen Tumen River. He was dragging me across the ice from China into North Korea. I was screaming uncontrollably. I looked up, he raised the butt of his rifle, he brought it down on my head, and I blacked out immediately. The next thing I knew, Yuna and I were prisoners in one of the most isolated countries in the world, one that viewed our country as its arch enemy. The next 140 days would be the most terrifying time of my life. I was accused of trying to bring down the North Korean government. I was sentenced to 12 years hard labor. But then, in early August, Yuna and I were surprisingly taken to a hotel. We were ushered down a dark hallway that was lined with about a dozen stone-faced North Korean security agents, all looking downwards. And at the end of the hallway were a set of double doors. When they opened those doors, there, standing before us, was President Clinton. Bless you, he said. I broke down in tears, and I don't know if it was the circular lighting in the room or my state of utter shock, but I really think that there was a halo hovering over his head. The next day on the plane ride back to the US, President Clinton told me that when he was considering embarking on that controversial, unpredictable mission to North Korea, Chelsea helped him with that decision. Dad, she said, what if it was me over there? From one daughter to another, thank you, Chelsea. During President Clinton's visit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-il, he had to do a very delicate diplomatic dance. He said that he couldn't look too jovial, lest it be interpreted that he was chumming it up with the hardline dictator, but he also couldn't appear too despondent and risk offending the North Koreans. His expression had to be perfect, perfectly expressionless. He said that Hillary and Chelsea coached him on it. Thank you, Madam Secretary. And thank you for working behind the scenes as Secretary of State and approving your husband to make that trip to North Korea. During my captivity, During my captivity, there were many leaders in government whose names were floated to help with our release. But the North Koreans were emphatic. It had to be President Clinton. One North Korean authority told me, "He is your last and only hope." I didn't know why the North Koreans were so insistent, but I later learned that it may have had to do with something that happened 15 years prior. President Clinton told me that when he met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-il, Kim told him that when Kim's father, Kim Il-sung, passed away 15 years prior in 1994, President Clinton was the first leader to reach out to offer his condolences, even before Kim's own allies. Kim told Clinton that he always remembered that kind gesture and had wanted to meet him ever since. I just think it's so wild that a possible reason for our release can be traced back to that simple condolence message that was given so long ago. But it speaks to the leadership of President Clinton, the quiet diplomacy, and the power of a simple act of kindness. Thank you, Mr. President. The Clintons and the Clinton Presidential Center embody this ideal that even a small gesture can have a huge impact. It can change lives, it can save lives. That the things we do today have ripple effects that can impact our lives and others in ways that can be hard to imagine. And speaking of ripple effects, 9 months after returning home from captivity, I gave birth to my first child. Yes, if you do the math, you can deduce that my husband and I got to work pretty quickly in the baby making department. We decided to give her the middle name Jefferson in honor of President William Jefferson Clinton. And I'd like to introduce my daughter, who is now 14 years old, Lee Jefferson.
Thank you, President Clinton, for rescuing my mom. Without your leadership, diplomacy, and kindness, my mom wouldn't be here today, and neither would I. I am so proud of my middle name. Thank you, Secretary Clinton, for being an inspiration to me as a young woman who wants to break barriers and make a difference in this world. And now, I am so honored to welcome President Clinton and Secretary Clinton.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So good.
Thank
You did such a good job. That was so great.
Thank you so much.
That was so good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.
What we've all been waiting for. Mr. President, Madam Secretary, I am so honored to be sitting here. Lee was so nervous, by the way.
Wouldn't you fly to North Korea to free her? Oh, good.
I am so deeply honored to be sitting with you both to talk about your work, your passion, and your plans for the future. Now, one of the things that strikes me, and I think everyone can agree here, is your commitment to service beyond the office. As citizens, Mr. President, you have said that there's no title you wear more proudly than that of citizen. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the work that you have done as citizens over the past 20 years and your plans for the next 20. All right, Mr. President, I'd like to start with you. You know, you've built something so special here with the Clinton Presidential Center and its connection to the foundation. The achievements and the impact have been truly remarkable. What made you want to make the center really the epicenter of your post-presidential work? And can you also talk about how the center really serves as a bridge through your phases of life, world leader, philanthropist, and citizen?
Well, I wanted to put it here because first I felt I owed the people of my native state. If it hadn't been for the chances they gave me to serve as governor over and over again, proving I could hold down a job, I never would have become president. And secondly, I thought there ought to be one of these presidential libraries in the heartland, in the middle of the country, where people who maybe could never even afford to go to New York or Washington or California, or even to Texas, believe it or not. I just wanted to be here. And I knew that the interstate highway carries people from everywhere, from east to west, and from north to south, and I just wanted to be here. And finally, I wanted an excuse to keep coming home. I liked it. I was so grateful when senior member of the House delegation in New York urged Hillary to run for the Senate. I was thrilled when she won. I think probably still was her favorite job. And I've loved living in New York, and we live in a town with 3,600 people. And it's a fascinating place. But I get disoriented if I go very long without being here. It's important. We all have roots somewhere, and if you like your roots, it's a good thing.
There's a certain energy being here in Little Rock for sure, and a strong sense of community. How did being from Arkansas shape your approach to leadership and public service in and out of office?
Well, I think the most profound thing was that I was born in a place appropriately called Hope, to a widowed mother. And my grandparents were my primary caregivers when my mother went back to nursing school. And my grandfather, in the first 4 or 5 years of my life, made a living owning a little grocery store that was across the street from the cemetery. And most of the Black people in Hope lived behind my grandfather's grocery store or behind the cemetery. And so, unlike most white Southerners, I spent my childhood feeling that it was normal to be in social contact with Black people. It was the greatest gift in the world, and it was total fluke. And a great tribute to my grandparents, who fought like cats and dogs about everything. Oh God, they fought. But they both agreed about civil rights. And I remember there I was with these two working class white people in 1957, listening to them rail about how important it was to integrate the schools. It was very rare. It was just a fluke. And it reflects nothing on me except I absorbed it. And I remember when I ran for president, a woman who had been born in Arkansas and moved to Toledo, Ohio, wrote a letter to the editor in the Toledo Blade saying that I was the only white boy in this little town that played with Black children, and that was good qualifications for being president. But the most thrilling thing that ever happened to me was on Hillary's behalf. In 2016, I was going into Marietta, Ohio, and I saw a Black minister standing on the side of the road with a big red cross with stones in it. And I got out to say hi to him, and he said, "Mr. President, I'll save you some time. I'm for Hillary." And he said, I was for her even when she ran against Senator Obama. He said, because he said, "I'm the proud grandson of Luther Black of Hope, Arkansas." And he proceeded to tell me that his grandfather came into my grandfather's store one day and didn't have any money for food for his family. And my grandfather said, "Luther, you need to feed your family, don't you?" And he said, "Well," he said, "take what you need and sign for it. And if you can pay me, come back and pay me." And he said, my grandfather told me that your grandfather did that for everybody, and he didn't have much more money than we did. And he said, if Bill Clinton is, I still can hardly say it. He said, if he is half the man his grandfather was, he'll be a great president.
That's
now,
really good.
And then he proceeded to tell me he'd kept up closely with Hillary when she was First Lady of Arkansas and First Lady of the country and a senator, and he felt the same way about her. And he said, so don't waste any more time with me. I just wanted to tell you that. And I'll carry that conversation with me till the day I die. And it's the stuff that matters to me. I was raised in a small town, and the way you treated people and what you cared about, it determines who you are and how you keep score in life. It's not bad to keep score. We all keep score. We like to win. We don't like to lose. But most games don't have to be zero-sum games. The ones where we all have a chance to win produce better societies and stronger societies and more durable ones over the long run. And, you know, we've been in a zero-sum game phase here lately, and elections are zero-sum games so they draw out the distinctions. You're not going to have two presidents. And the Romans tried that for a while. It didn't work all that well. So it's one of life's grand dilemmas we have to face.
Well, the boy from Hope has brought hope to many, including me. Madam Secretary, I'd like to talk about that and hope, especially in a time when we are living at a particularly polarizing time in America, where we are also facing some of our biggest global challenges. So how do we tackle those challenges? What are some of the unique approaches to problem solving and bringing back some of that hope?
Well, I think that's the right question to be asking in today's climate. And I think that, you know, what Bill just said really provides somewhat of a guiding light about thinking of ways that we can get back to respecting each other, listening to each other, having empathy for whatever problems in life people have. And, you know, it's pretty basic, but we are now all chopped up in these different groups, and we all have our own source of information, and we all listen or watch what we already are influenced by, and it really hardens people's views of themselves and of others. And so part of the way to break through that, it seems, you know, to Bill and me, is to provide some alternatives. And I really appreciated listening to everybody who was on this stage, including you, talking about some of the programs, the projects, the work that, you know, Bill had done, that we do through the foundation or the Clinton Global Initiative, because we have to recreate a sense of possibility, and that goes hand in hand with hope. And so part of what we are turning our attention to is to create programs, projects, chances for people to get involved in doing things that connect them with other people, whether it's through the center here or through CGI or Too Small to Fail or any of the other opportunities that we provide through the Clinton Foundation. And, you know, we are going to launch this big effort to modernize and expand the building so that it can be more of a open, inviting place for people to convene, people here in Little Rock, throughout the state, regionally, but even nationally and internationally, you know, to make those connections, to have a chance to, you know, be part of something bigger than themselves. And so I'm very excited about that, because I think you have to keep looking toward the future. You know, one of a young man named Sean Landris is here. He's the one who told Bill his '92 campaign should use a theme song Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Well, that fit Bill's personality perfectly because, you know, he was raised that way and he has lived that way. But we need to remind ourselves that that's not only a good way to live. What can we do today? Is there something we can do to help somebody? Is there some kind of service we can perform, kindness that we can demonstrate? And then how can we do it together? And, you know, the story you were telling about his going to North Korea, that's in his book, in the book Citizen. And I remember so vividly our debate, because I was Secretary of State, and in the White House, you know, how are we going to get you both out? And, you know, there were a lot of other people volunteering to go or who we thought would be appropriate. And the North Koreans kept saying, no, no, no. And I'm so glad you mentioned that probably the reason that he was able to come to bring you home is because he had kept reaching out even to somebody who is an adversary like the head of North Korea when he sent the condolence, recognition of the death of his father. I mean, that's the kind of thing that has a place in politics, in government, in global affairs that come from the heart, you know, come from a place like, you know, look, we disagree with these people. We are not happy with what they're doing, although he made progress on shutting down their plutonium production, which then didn't continue. He said, so, you know, let's show a little humanity. Let's make an outreach. And I circle back to that because we need so much more of that. And right now, our social media world, our information ecosystems, they reward insults and attacks and sarcasm and all the rest of it. I plead to that as well, because that's how you break through. That's how you get people to listen to you on other things. We've got to find more effective ways of coming together and communicating about there's something bigger than, you know, the nastiness and the divisiveness of today.
Well, it's a great segue to a question that I have for both of you before we get to some of the questions from the audience. And that is that it seems like we are living during a very distinct time in our country's history, you know, one that seemed like there was a lot of possibility, but it seems like we also may be drifting farther away from that. What can we do here as ordinary citizens to really put the people first and secure a future that works for all of us?
Well, I think the most important thing you can do is in your communities or any groups you're in, is insist on representative and diverse voices being involved in conversations about what decisions you're going to make. And realize that, look, our differences matter a lot. It's one of the reasons that America has done so well is that we have maintained our freedoms and our diversity, and we know that different perspectives produce better decisions than homogenous groups. Like if we could find the person in this vast room that had the highest IQ and put you off in one of these side rooms like I was, Hillary and I were just waiting in, and give you 10 questions and give you whatever you wanted to eat and treat you like a royalty. And the rest of us were stuck here with cold coffee and stale rolls. After 3 days, and we all got the same questions, we would produce better answers than the lone genius.
You know that lone genius is you, right?
I mean, we would. Diverse groups make better decisions than homogenous ones or lone geniuses. So our differences do matter, but the point is they only matter if our common humanity matters more. Because otherwise, you just feast on each other, and every single decision in life is a zero-sum one. That is, in order for there to be a winner, there has to be a loser. And you can't take advantage of your common strengths if the only thing that matters are your differences that you find offensive. And I've seen that all my life, and I now know it is true. And look, we're just passing through here. We now know our universe is almost 14 billion years old. Our planet's about 4 billion years old. And there are more than 1 billion planetary systems, galaxies in the universe. Makes you think it doesn't matter so much on who's on Mount Rushmore, doesn't it? I mean, think of it, it's just happening. Because of this, before I came out here, I was grieving because one of my high school classmates who fought a brave 10-year battle with cancer when she wasn't trying to assure that Terry McAuliffe won his next election, just passed away. And I loved her. She was unbelievable and brave and good. We're just passing through. And we all need to just calm down and do something that builds people up and tears them down. We just need to calm down.
Madam Secretary.
I guess I would just add that we're not being Pollyannish. We understand we face some very challenging times. We know that there'll be a lot of decisions being made in the next couple of years that we will certainly not agree with, and that we think are decided wrongly. And so, in addition to, staying involved and staying aware, it's important to find something that makes you feel good about the day. Because if you're in a constant state of agitation about our political situation, it is really going to shorten your life. I mean, you can't live with that level of stress 24/7. And you can live with it for some time. I certainly do, because I pay close attention. But I think it's much more important that we find ways that make each of us feel like we are contributing. As Bill said, we're passing through, but let's leave some footsteps in terms of what we've tried to do to help other people. And that's what I admire so much about what Bill has done in the post-presidential years, which he's written about in this book, because it's a real reminder that there's always something to do and somebody to try to help. And I guess that's what I would hope we'd keep in mind.
Thank you.
I agree with that.
Well, we are going to get interactive right now and involve some questions from the audience that have been submitted. The first one: there are many of us who feel deflated by the recent election, including facing challenges and questions of what it means to be an American. What sustains you when faced with similar disappointment, and what advice do you have for us all as we look toward protecting our democracy now and in the future?
I think you have to keep working for what you believe. But the smartest way to do it is not to scream at people, but to talk to them about what you believe and try to keep reaching across the divides without rolling over. I'm not suggesting you should roll over. I'm suggesting you should reach out. And there's two very different things. So that's what I think. And what Hillary said, there are, no matter what happens in politics, there's something good you can do tomorrow that won't happen if you don't do it, no matter what happens. And so I maybe because I'm now verging on being ancient, I think about that, but you're not going to get today back, and you're not going to get tomorrow back, and you shouldn't spend all your time just being angry about what somebody else is doing when you could spend several hours making something good happen. And I think we really have to think about it like that. We all keep score. As I was saying last night in that book event, we all keep score. But if you're going to keep score, then you have to live by how you keep score. So we keep, our family motto is get caught trying. You won't win them all, but get caught trying. And if you keep score, are kids better off? Are people better off when you quit than when you start? Are people coming together instead of being torn apart? If that's the way you keep score, then you ought to be trying to run up a score, not lamenting the fact that somebody else is winning a different game because they keep score in a different way. That's the only advice I have. You can't get these days back, and you need to seize them. It's a gift. Every morning is a gift.
And in addition, figure out what we can do to win again. I mean, that goes sort of without saying, right?
Well, we can.
But you got to have a story to tell that people will find credible, that they will relate to, that they will, think can be their story too. I mean, what was so brilliant about Bill's 1992 campaign was, the man from Hope. And it really resonated with people. His life story did. He matched his life story with a hopeful story about the future that he wanted to help create as president, which so many of you helped him do. So, politics has to remain, for people like us who care about it, a part of what we do and what we think about. But I think we have to shift our focus so that we are better at reaching people, as Bill said, the outreach that we need to do in a way that makes the case as to the candidates we support, the campaigns that we run. And I think those two things go together. It can't be, I think I'll go, make a difference in somebody's life over here, and then I'll be in politics in a slash and burn zero-sum way. You've got to figure out, we all do, how to, connect that. And I think that's going to be one of the interesting and important challenges for the next couple of years.
Well, we've heard our marching orders. Thank you. We do have to start to wrap this up because I hear that there's a parade that they are planning for, and they're going to shut the streets down. Couldn't you have done something about that, Mr. President? But
I just know we're serving barbecue in the library tonight.
Yeah, so I guess we got to get ready for the barbecue. Mr. President, Madam Secretary, thank you for the
Thank you all so much. I hope you've had a good time. We loved having you here. Thank you.